The following presentation concerns waste disposal in war zones. Why is waste disposal in war zones an issue? Well, over 160,000 veterans have reported symptoms that they believe have come from burn pit exposure. Many veterans have suffered respiratory problems from contractors burning trash, tires, and hazardous items in burn pits which are adjacent to their Army barracks. Veterans have sued military contracting giant KBR. However, they lost in the U.S. District Court and the U.S. Court of Appeals. The court says that KBR was under U.S. military direction when they burned tires and medical waste next to soldiers' barracks. Therefore, they are not liable for their damages.
Dr. Anthony Sima is a professor at Stony Brook University School of Medicine. He's been analyzing dust from near burn pits.
How toxic is that dust?
This dust is very toxic.
He says 14% of veterans he's studied return with some sort of lung complication.
I think clearly we don't allow people to burn things in an unregulated fashion in the United States, and we have EPA limits against the number of particles in the air.
So they shouldn't be doing it over there?
They should not be doing it over there.
Temporality and consistency are two of Bradford Hill's criteria that support evidence that burn pit exposure led to respiratory problems. There was delayed development of disease as soldiers did not report lung problems prior to deployment, and for consistency, over 160,000 veterans experienced problems. Drawing an analogy to Agent Orange offered supporting evidence that veterans are entitled to compensation, as the delay in recognition of their conditions as service-related only worsened the outcomes. More supporting evidence is the synergistic effects of air pollution and environmental hazards, which led veterans to be at an increased risk of developing respiratory problems as compared to civilians in their home country. Opponents believe that there is a lack of biologic gradient, which indicates that the causal pathway is confounded by external factors. There's lack of evidence that shows that greater exposure to burn pits led to more severe respiratory problems. Opponents also believe that KBR was acting under U.S. military orders, and therefore they are not at fault for their health problems. Lastly, opponents also believe that there's insufficient data to establish causality between burn pit exposure and respiratory problems. There's contradicting studies in that the environment is different from that of their home and presents other sources of contamination in particulate matter that will affect respiratory problems. There is no data showing that the removal hazard resulted in reduction of veterans with respiratory problems. A biological gradient is difficult to prove given the other environmental confounders. However, we do have before and after deployment medical records which speak to the effect of burn pits. In addition, the lawsuit only assesses KBR's liability, not the validity of the claim that burn pit exposure led to respiratory problems. Lastly, it's difficult to establish direct causality as this is not a controlled study. However, other controlled studies have shown that exposure to chemicals found in IEDs cause respiratory problems. From this presentation, it is clear that waste disposal in war zones is a very important environmental health issue. Soldiers and veterans are becoming sicker and sicker as they are exposed to burning hazardous materials, IEDs, human waste, and tires near inches away from where they sleep. The EPA would not allow this back stateside, so why do we allow it in war zones? This is not fair to our country's soldiers and veterans, the people who give their lives for our freedom.